Hi everyone, I wanted to create this video to show how to create a very simple Xylophone app using SwiftUI. This was based off of a class that my friend was taking from App Brewery, which I think is a great course. I've seen it on Udemy, and it was using UIKit, but he asked, if I could help him make a SwiftUI version of it. I said, sure, let me see what I can do. So here we have Xcode. I'm not going to go through the installation process of Xcode, but I'm sure you've installed it, you've used it before. So we're going to go ahead and create a new Xcode project. All right, and we're going to do an iOS app. So make sure you select iOS and an application, and we're going to create next. And we're going to call the project name Xylophone SwiftUI. And of course, you can add your team and your organizational identifier if you have one, but make sure the interface is SwiftUI, language is Swift, no core data, no tests. And I'll just put it in my app dev folder. It's up to you if you want to do a Git repository on your Mac. I am not going to do one for this because it's going to be a pretty simple application, and probably to just discard it when I'm done. So we'll create the app. All right. So here is our Xylophone app. Let me try to make this a little bit bigger while we wait for it to kind of finishing my simulator previews and everything like that. And we'll just scroll this down. And it's, again, this computer's pretty slow, so we're going to have to wait a little while for my previews to come in. But one thing I want to start off with, which will break this preview for sure, is I'll leave it. Most people will leave kind of their initial screen as content view. I like to make it more explicit as to what view I'm looking at. So for me, I am actually going to refactor this. So again, let's control click, go to refactor, let's rename it, and instead of content view, let's make it Xylophone view. All right, so I like doing that. Some people don't, and I'll just change the comment here, just so I have the right comments within this file. Some people don't like doing this, some people do. It's very up to you. But that way, if I create another view, I know exactly which view is for everything. I'm not going to go through VStacks and HStacks and ZStacks and things like that. Hopefully you have some basic knowledge of it, but at a high level, VStacks are elements that you want stacked vertically. HStack is horizontal, and of course the ZStack is layers on top of each other. So in this example, when you first load SwiftUI, VStack is giving you an image of a globe with a large image and a foreground with an accent color above the text "Hello World." All right, so for the Xylophone app, the app will have basically the notes, all 7 notes, and it'll just be one on top of each other. So a VStack actually works really well for this. So let's go ahead and get rid of all this default stuff. We don't need that. We can also get rid of the padding because I like to build things as we go and add it if needed. So we have our clean palette here, our clean slate. So let's just get started. So the first thing is probably a button, and I know some people like to use this and then use a button and drag it down or drag it somewhere on here. I actually prefer to type most of my stuff in, but for the first couple ones I will go ahead and use this plus, and then we can go and then I'll just start coding directly into, or just start typing directly into the editor. So the first note that we're going to have here is the C note, right? So in the action, right, we'll put a little comment here that says need to load player and play note. All right. So that is our C note. But what else do we need to do? We can't just have this. It needs to be like a bar that goes across, right? So, and I need this thing to be a little bit bigger, right? So let's do this. Let's do the font. Let's make it a. We have a couple different options. So I like large. Again, you can kind of look at fonts and see what they have, but let's make the font large. Okay, great. C is looking much better. Um, let's do a background color. So I like to do ground. Let's do a. Um, Actually, what we should do is probably should do a background. Um, and make it. Yeah. Well, let's see what we can do. Let's make the background color. Oops, sorry. Let's just actually do a background of a rounded rectangle. I'm sorry, I'm going back and forth on this. I've been thinking about how I want to structure this. So let's do a rounded rectangle so we can kind of make it look good. And I will do a corner radius because that way we can kind of round the corners as well, kind of make it look cool. Let's do 15 for now. Let's see what this looks like. Okay, so it's black. All right, not an ideal color. So I believe let's do a fill, and we'll fill it with let's do red for now. All right. Okay, so that's all right. It looks pretty bad. So what else do we need? All right. Well, let's make the font red. So again, you could simply just type in foreground color. But you know what? I'll do. Okay, I said I go back and forth. So let's see what we have here. So under kind of these modifiers, right? I'm probably gonna try to find something that let's see if we can do foreground. Okay, so we got effects, foreground color. So that's the foreground color of the elements displayed in this view. Great. So let's just drag this down here, and let's make the foreground color white. We want the text to be white. Let's see what that looks like. Okay. All right. Well, so far our button is very, very, very small. Okay, so we need to make this a little bit bigger. And if you kind of look up here and things like that, there is something called frame. So let's just look up frame real quick. Frame. Let's see what this says. Frame. Oh, I guess I'm not sure why there's no help for that. But under mod layout. All right, so but with some Googling, we can tell that we do need a frame. So I'm going to drop it actually before the background because I want the frame to fill out first. Okay, and then we'll put a background on it. All right, so now we've got a really like a much better button, right? So the width, we'll make the max width. I'm going to try to change this around. So there's a max width, and let's make it. You know what? Let's do this actually. Max width and the max height. So if you look up frame, let's just do it this way so that everybody can see. You can do a width, height, and alignment, or we can do a one with specific size constraints, right? So I could force a width and a height, but I can also make it a little bit more dynamic, so to speak, by using this min width, max width. So what I'm going to do is at least the max width, right? I'd like it to be, I could put a number in here, but I actually just want to make the screen size. So what we'll do is there's a element or an object, a UI screen object, main dot bounds dot width. All right, returns the width of my UI screen. All right, so that's looking pretty good. It's got all the way across the screen, and it looks like a note now. And maybe the height needs to be adjusted later because we kind of want to make our notes a little fatter, but we'll get back to that. All right, now let's go ahead and run this because I want to see where we are. So let's run this. All right, build succeeded. All right, and then it's attaching. Again, it's a slow computer, so I apologize for the little bit of delay, but once it attaches, let's see what we get. All right. Okay, here we go. So we got our note here. Let's see if I can push it. So clicking out here does nothing, but clicking on the letter does do something. All right. So there is one of the issues off the bat. So this button, only the text is clickable, not the whole note, which is pretty lame for a Xylophone app. So let's figure that part out first. The other thing we'll figure out, actually we'll do that first, is this. Info plist contains no UI scene configuration. Alright, so what does that mean? If you go ahead and take this and you Google it, basically it is looking for, in your info.plist file, it's looking for something called scene configuration. If you don't see info.plist here, go to your Xylophone SwiftUI and go into info, and then under here, this custom iOS target properties basically is your info.plist file. So under application scene manifest, we will add something called scene configuration. All right, and we don't have to put anything there. But now you'll notice that when I did that, you can now see your info.plist file, which again is basically that thing that we were messing around with. So let's go back to our Xylophone view, and let's go ahead and just run it one more time. See if we got rid of this error. Okay, so it looks like that error is okay. But again, this clicking, or this being able to touch the entire bar to make the note is what we want. So let's take care of that. So if you look at button, there's another way to define the label. Basically, you want the entire label. So we're going to use something called label, and we're going to go ahead and sorry, let me get my curly braces fixed here. There we go. And in this label, we are going to, that's where we can define our entire frame and structure, and that way we can make the whole thing clickable. So first thing we need to do is, we're not going, because we have a label, we don't need to define what's on the button up there. We will put it down here, text, and and the C note, okay? So there you go. So now we have a text in our C note, and let's take a look at this. All right, so everything looks the same, except that now when we run it, you can see the whole note is clickable. And actually, the way it's doing it, where it's kind of fading out, and then when I release it's coming back, works kind of the way I was expecting. I know my friend mentioned that he had to do a little bit of transparency work, and then do a timer to kind of make it fade and come back, but SwiftUI takes care of all that for you. So that actually looks really good as a single button. All right, so we've got our thing rendered. So now let's load the player, and we need to play the note as well. So let's get the notes. Let's go to my Finder, and I do have a couple of notes here, just basically 7 notes. So I'm going to grab these, and I'm going to drag them into my project. And I'll just put it up here for now. So when you drag it into your project, you'll want to copy the items over, and create any folder references if needed, but make sure you add to the target. So let's go ahead and add those. There are my notes. Great. Just for a little bit more cleanliness, let's just highlight all of these, and I'm going to control click again, and let's just make a group out of this. We'll call it sounds, just to make it a little bit cleaner. Now, one thing I do want to point out is, when you're adding assets to your project, it doesn't hurt to always go back to targets, and under build phases, take a look at your copy bundle resources. So you want to make sure that these WAV files are being copied, because if they aren't, when you run your player, it's going to crash because it can't find these files. All right, so let's go back here. Let's finish this up. We should be done in the next 10 minutes. Let's try for 10 minutes. All right, so we need to get our AV foundation, right? So I think that's how you play the audiovisual files, and we need to create a player. So we're going to do a state variable, and I don't want to dive into the different types of variables here. You can certainly read about it, and you can learn about the different types of variables, but uh, but here I'm going to use a state variable to create a player, an AV audio player, and I'm going to force unwrap. I'm going to force unwrap this. There are things here that I'm going to do that are a little bit of a shortcut. Ideally, I'm not a huge fan of force unwrapping things because there could be an issue where things are null, and you really want to handle that in your code to make sure the app just doesn't crash. All right. So here we're going to create. Oops. Let me put it under this. All right. So we're going to create a URL. Basically, the URL to our our note that we want to play, our file we want to play, right? So we're going to do a bundle main URL, and we're going to do the resource and extension. So the resource name here is the C note, which is to test this out. The extension is a WAV file. So WAV file. Now we have our URL. Again, we need to take our player, and we will try to play these, to associate the AV player with the contents of this URL, and then we're going to tell the player to play. Now, I personally don't like doing tries and not without catching it and things like that, but for the simplicity of this application, I'm going to do it here. This URL is going to complain that I have to unwrap it because it's possible that if this line doesn't work, that URL could still be null. So I will force unwrap it. Again, I don't prefer to do this, but I will do it for today. All right, so let's go ahead and play this and see what we have. All right. So we have the C note. Let's just push it. Okay. So it's making the note. Sounds great. Stopping. Everything looks good so far. So I've been getting this error while playing with this. I'm not 100% sure how to get rid of this. So if anybody knows how to, please let me know. All right. So I think that's it. Now all we have to do is the other buttons, and we can obviously cut and paste this over and over and over. That's probably not ideal. So probably the easiest way is to pull this button view, into another SwiftUI view, and then from our main view, we'll just call this button view. All right, so let's do that. So what we'll do, File, New, and we'll do a new. Well, actually, no, let's just do Control Click. So Control Click, we'll do a new file, and it will be a SwiftUI view. All right, so SwiftUI view here again. Next, and what I will call this is, I'll call it a xylophone key. All right, so just one key of the xylophone. And you will make sure you want to have it under the targets, and we'll go ahead and create it. All right, so again, this is, if I render the preview, you'll see that it is just going to render this hello world. That's not what we need, right? What we want is this xylophone button right here. So I'm going to just cut this entire button out, and I'm going to drop it right in this text. Boop, there, okay. And this is going to complain. Well, let's see what it complains about. Okay, cannot find AV audio player. Okay, well, that's because I did not define it. Let's go back up here. We'll pull our player. Take that out. We're going to drop it right in here. All right. And then let's see what happens. All right, these should go away. Oh, still can't find. Oh, why is that? Because we did not pull our AV foundation over. So let's pull our AV foundation over as well. And then let's see. hopefully this works. And we should see the key like before, right? All right, so we're back in business. And so here, what we're going to do is, I'm just going to delete some of these extra lines. Here, we're going to call xylophone key, right? And in this way, we can call xylophone key, xylophone key, xylophone key. All right, do it a couple times. Oh, 3 keys, perfect. All we need to do now is change this from D, probably change the background color, and I know in the Xylophone app, the width of this kind of shrunk down as it went. The other thing I want to point out is for Xylophone app, I think when you go into landscape mode, you don't want it to really flip. You kind of want to keep it in this portrait mode, even if it flips to landscape mode. So one of the things we'll do is in our in our project, in our general, we're going to just allow the deployment info to be portrait and an iPad portrait. All right, so that way, even if someone turns their phone sideways to landscape, it's not going to change your view because then the buttons become much wider. It just looks a little strange. For Xylophone view, I would imagine you always want to keep that same orientation. So that's what we're going to do. All right, so again, we have our Xylophone view here. And we need to just make some changes, all right? So what do we want to change? So for each of our keys, we want to change the note, the text here, right? So it's going to be C, D, E, F, G, A, B. And we also want to change the color, so that's 2 things. And we kind of want to make it shrink. So actually, we're going to change this max width as we go through this application. So let's just start creating those variables. All right, I'm going to do, let's do let music note, and we'll make it a string. We'll make it an optional. Let's make the key color also optional. And we'll just, let's say, key width subtraction, so, something like this. I'm sure there's a better name, but right now I can't think of something. So we'll make that a float. And the reason I'm going to make this a float is because down here in this area right here, if you option click on width, it tells you it's a float, right? So if I subtract 2 numbers together, so the idea being that this max width for the first one will be kind of the full width, then each subsequent one will subtract a proportional amount. I don't want to have to convert from float to int to CG float and all that stuff. So we're just going to make it a CG float. And again, these are all optionals, which means we'll have to force unwrap them all when we use them, which again, I don't particularly like, but it's okay for this application. All right, so now that we have all of these in here, we need to go ahead and let's go ahead and make the substitutions, right? So we're going to get a music note, so that'll go there, and it'll also change the text. So we'll just music note. All right. Then the WAV file is fine. Foreground color will always be white. No, there you go. So I got to force unwrap this because this is an optional up here, so it could be nil. And here's what we're going to do. So we're going to subtract some key with sub. All right, so some subtraction there. Again, force unwrap that. And then the fill is going to be a color, so key color. Also force unwrap that because it could be nil if it comes through. All right, so now we have this. Can't build the schema because all our previews are broken here. So let's pass in the right values for this preview. All right. So go ahead. If I do the parentheses again, it pops up what I need. So let's just hit enter. Boom, there it is. So let's do music note as the letter C. So let's make sure everything works the way it used to. Color will be red. And this we will subtract, actually nothing. We'll just keep the full width for now. Let's see what it looks like. And I think this will also crash because I didn't change it in my previous view. So what we'll do is so what we need to do is let's copy this. And in this view, this is not going to work because I have variables now. So let's, sorry, parameters now. So let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. Let's see if it works. All right. Let's see what happens. All right, so we're back in business. We have the right musical notes. We have everything we need. The key works. We have everything there. And so the only thing we need to do is really we need to change all of these musical notes to what we want. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to copy this a few more times. And I'm sure there's probably a cleaner way to refactor this, but again, just trying to get this done and out the door. So we're going to do something like that. So I'm going to just trying to make that a little smaller so I can get these all in one line. There we go. All right, let's just go ahead and do this. D, E, F, G, H, A, P. And let's do Roy G. Biv, the rainbow. So red, orange, Roy, yellow, green, blue, Roy G. Biv, indigo, indigo, violet. Okay, perfect. And then we'll subtract. Oh, sorry, purple. Let's do purple. So let's also subtract a little bit. You know what? This is actually touching the edges. I'm not too happy about that. So let's just. And I know some people are going to complain about the way I'm doing this, but I think for this application it is fine. If anybody has any suggestions, I'm more than ears. Please let me know. All right, so now we have our xylophone, and let's see what it looks like if we play it, if we build it. All right, let's take a look. And all right, so actually it looks pretty good. Only thing is maybe these could be a little bigger. So under the key, let's just go ahead and add, and you know the reason I found this is I just kind of played around with it, but you can certainly try different things to make it look a little bit different. Max height, I'm just going to actually make it infinity. That way it will fill up the entirety of that V-frame, sorry, that V-stack that I have there. In my preview, this will take up the whole preview because I only have one button. But in the xylophone view, it should stack accordingly and look pretty good. All right, so I think that's good. Let me go ahead and play it and see what we get. All right. So I think this is looking really good. Let's just make sure it all works. Okay. So there you go. Xylophone app and SwiftUI. Only other thing I think we should do is under assets, we probably need an app icon. So let me just pull that one over. All right. And then let's double check everything works one last time. And if it works, looks great. All right. Hopefully this was helpful for some of you out there. Again, there's probably ways I can make this a little bit smoother or a little bit more, a little bit cleaner. So if anybody has any ideas, please let me know, and I can make those changes. Thanks, everyone.